We're now past the halfway point of NHL training camps and the NHL preseason. And today's video is dedicated to doing updates here on a lot of the NHL's top rookies that are in training camp. Who's going back to junior? Who will report to the minors? And who looks like they have an excellent shot at making the NHL? All that coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top here, today we're going to have some NHL training camp and preseason updates, but it's all focused and dedicated here on all the top rookies that have been going to training camp, and we're going to let you know how everybody's doing, who's likely going to make the NHL, who's going back to junior, and who might report to the American Hockey League affiliates. Now, I don't plan to update here on every single rookie in the NHL. That would take way too long. I'm mainly focusing today's video on rookies that we weren't sure where they were going to end up. Obviously, there's all kinds of top rookies like Rasmus Dahlin and Casey Mittelstadt, Svechnikov, Sedina. They're more than likely going to be playing in the NHL 100%, and at this point in time, we don't have any information to say they won't. So I'm mainly focusing on all the other rookies where their futures were not quite clear. Now let's get started here with some of the rookies that we know for sure are heading back to junior for at least one more season. The New York Islanders have announced that their 2018 first round selection Noah Dobson will be heading back to junior to spend one more year here with the Acadie Bathurst Titans of the QMJHL. I did think there was a slim possibility with the Islanders lineup the way it was that there was a possibility he could work his way into a spot here. But as of right now, it looks like the Islanders are mainly going with a more veteran lineup, and Dobson will be heading back to junior for one more year. The Florida Panthers have returned forward Owen Tippett to his OHL team as well. It was highly speculated that Tippett could very well push for a spot, but with some of the other moves the Panthers made, they do have a lot of other veteran forwards already under contract. Like, for example, they picked up Mike Hoffman this offseason, and it's kind of limited the amount of rookies they can have in their lineup. It looks as though Henrik Borgstrom of the Panthers will be sticking with the club, but for right now, Tippett is heading back to junior. Florida Panthers head coach Bob Boughner did make some comments indicating that he was impressed with Tippett's training camp. It wasn't that he didn't perform well. It's just really that they want to make sure that he had the most opportunity to play this year and really continue his development. And they felt based on their current roster that that was best for him. The Vancouver Canucks have returned goaltender Michael DiPietro to his junior club as well. Obviously, with the Canucks already having Markstrom, Nielsen, and youngster Thatcher Demko pushing for a spot in training camp, this doesn't come as a huge surprise. This is probably best for DiPietro's development to stay in junior a little longer here and continue his development. Now let's jump over here and take a look at some other top prospects who have been notified that they will be sent down to the minors and will be starting their year at the American Hockey League level. The New York Islanders have announced some of their roster cuts and are really going with a more veteran forward group here. The Islanders have announced that Josh Ho-Sang, Michael Dal Colle, as well as Kiefer Bellows will all be assigned to their American Hockey League affiliate in Bridgeport. Obviously, for Kiefer Bellows, this isn't too big a deal. It's not a huge shock. This will be his first pro season. I do think he has a ton of potential at the NHL, but obviously they felt like he needed a little bit more seasoning. Plus, they do have a lot of other veterans under contract here that have to stay at the NHL level or be put through waivers. So that's not a huge shock. But for guys like Ho-Sang and Dal Colle that have been around for a few years now, that's really got to be concerning that they go through another year of not making a team here out of training camp. Will they end up being draft busts, or can they still pull through and eventually become regular NHL players? I know for me, I'm starting to doubt that either of them will ever become just that. The Tampa Bay Lightning have also made a bunch of cuts, sending forwards Taylor Raddysh and Boris Katchouk, along with defenseman Cal Foote, down to their American Hockey League affiliate. None of these players come as a huge surprise going to the American Hockey League level, especially Taylor Raddysh. I did think there was a possibility, though, that defenseman Cal Foote could potentially push for a spot. Same with Boris Katchouk, although I wasn't sure if he would make the team and stick there for the whole year. But after the Tampa Bay Lightning picked up forward Danik Martel off waivers the other day, they do need to keep him at the NHL level without putting him through waivers yet again. So that's the spot that I thought Katchouk very well might have a shot to take there. So obviously with Martel now being on the roster, that kind of bumps another guy down to the minors. So for right now, Raddysh, Katchouk, and Cal Foote all start the year in the AHL. The Ottawa Senators have made a bunch of cuts as well, sending some youngsters to the American Hockey League level, including 2016 first-rounder Logan Brown. Now, Logan Brown was expected to have an excellent shot at making this club, and with guys like John Gabriel Pageau out injured, he was going to potentially have a shot at a number 2, number 3 center role, but he didn't really look quite ready, couldn't really keep up with the pace, and instead will start the year at the American Hockey League level. He's going to be joined by Rudolph Balcers, who they picked up from San Jose in the Carlson deal, as well as forward Drake Batherson. Those three guys are actually more than likely going to all play together in one of the top lines in Belleville. So with Brown, Balcers, and Batherson, maybe they'll call them the Killer Bees or something. I don't know. Either way, three guys did play well together through camp and very well could be a formidable line for the Sens in Belleville. Now let's jump over and take a look at some of the top prospects that have been rather impressive and actually have an excellent shot at making the NHL clubs here, even though there were certainly no guarantees going into camp that they would find themselves a roster spot. Let's get started here with the St. Louis Blues. Now they have a trio of forwards who are all battling for spots, and it's quite a possibility that all three very well could stay out of training camp. So we're talking about Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, and Sammy Blais. All three have had a terrific training camp, really played well during the preseason here. And obviously, unfortunately for the Blues, Robbie Fabry is hurt yet again. Now this injury doesn't seem to be as severe. We don't really know the full nature of it. All they've said is lower body injury, and it seems to be muscular related is all they've kind of said. So hard to say if he'll be out long or beyond the beginning of the NHL season, or maybe he'll be back and ready by then. I'm not sure. But Sammy Blais has looked really good playing with Schwartz and Schenn up there, which is kind of where Fabry was possibly expected to slot on the lineup. So that very well could be an opportunity for Blais to jump in there if Fabry is going to be out for any extended period of time. And it's looking quite possible that Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou very well both could play on the fourth line together. So lots of youth possibly being injected by the Blues, even though we really weren't sure what direction they were going to. Considering the number of forwards they have under contract, they do have some tough decisions to make. They're going to end up having to put some... They will end up having to put some more guys through waivers to make room if they decide to keep those guys on the roster. But right now, things are looking good for all three to possibly stay. Now, speaking of teams with a trio of young forwards performing very well, let's now talk about the Edmonton Oilers. You're going to be very impressed so far this preseason with Kailer Yamamoto, Ty Rattie, and Jesse Puljujarvi. Now, I know technically Ty Rattie's not a rookie. I still kind of look at him as a prospect where he hasn't really put together a full NHL season, but at the same time, he is getting up there a little older than most of the guys we're talking about. But they've all looked tremendous during this preseason so far, and obviously at this point, we know that Rattie and Puljujarvi likely have roster spots where Yamamoto has more options, I guess, to go back to junior. But it does look like all three of them very well could stay with the Oilers beyond training camp and into the starting of the regular season. To start the NHL season, it very well looks possible here that the Oilers could put Ty Rattie on McDavid's line. They very well could play Yamamoto with Draisaitl, and they very well could put Puljujarvi on third line duty with Ryan Strome. Either way, all three of them have had an excellent training camp and preseason and very well looked like they're heading into the NHL regular season with a roster spot and some confidence under their belt here. Now, speaking of the Oilers, it's also quite possible they may end up keeping their first-round selection here from the 2018 draft, Evan Bouchard. Now, obviously, going into training camp, it wasn't totally clear if Bouchard would end up remaining with the club or possibly go back to junior. But at this point, it looks like Bouchard has a case to stay. Obviously, they're already shorthanded without Andre Sekera on the back end. They have some other guys in training camp on professional tryouts, but it very well looks like guys like Bouchard and Ethan Bear may be given more opportunity here, and Bouchard very well could be their best puck-moving defenseman already on the team. Offensively speaking, Bouchard's looked pretty solid during the preseason here. He's a great puck mover, and he's certainly going to have an opportunity here to play in the power play. So I do think there's a pretty good shot here that the Oilers start the year with Bouchard and Bear both on their NHL roster. Now, one of these prospects that might come as a surprise with a good chance to stay is Adam Boqvist with the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, as we know, Adam Boqvist certainly has a ton of potential and a ton of talent, was one of the more hyped prospect defensemen heading into the 2018 NHL draft. But after the draft, when you listen to Boqvist and listen to the Hawks talk, it sounded like they very well might have thought, including Boqvist himself, that he was probably at least 1 or 2 seasons away, maybe even a little more, from being a regular NHL player. He does have an opportunity to still go back and play junior in the Ontario Hockey League with the London Knights, which would be an awesome opportunity for him. But recent comments from Coach Quenneville indicates that they're seriously considering keeping Boqvist on the roster, and he very well may play this season. Obviously, the Hawks have had some holes on the back end. They have an injury now to Connor Murphy as well. So they very well may end up keeping Boqvist as well as Jokiharju on the back end. Both those guys very well could help revitalize the Blackhawks blue line. It really maybe help them show some big improvements, at least offensively speaking this year. Obviously, both of those guys likely will need some work on their defensive game, as most young defensemen do. Although both those guys would be a big help to the Blackhawks in the back end, both being pretty good skaters and puck-moving defensemen, which really help the forward group and get more offensive opportunities. So we very well could see more youth on the Blackhawks blue line than we originally expected. It looks as though the Vegas Golden Knights very well might keep Erik Brannstrom in the fold here as well. Obviously, they have Nate Schmidt out of the lineup for 20 games due to that suspension. We have Shea Theodore, who's still not signed. And at this point, there's no updates or progress on a contract. So with having 2 veteran guys like that out of the lineup, that's going to have a major impact. So they're going to have to keep at least one younger defenseman around. Brannstrom, as well as other youngster Nicholas Hague, both look pretty solid here in the preseason. But the Golden Knights did decide to send Hague down to the minors. So it looks as though Brannstrom very well might earn himself a spot, at least on a temporary basis here. If we go into the beginning of the NHL regular season here and Theodore is still not signed, you throw in the Schmidt suspension, I do think there's a pretty good opportunity here for Brannstrom to step in and play. Obviously, depending on how well he plays, will determine whether or not there's a level of urgency for them to get Theodore back in the lineup or how they need to proceed there. At this point, it's not really clear how long that contract dispute is going to end up dragging on before they come to an agreement here and get a contract in place. But if Brandstrom's playing well, it certainly takes the pressure off Vegas and gives them more leverage in negotiations with Theodore as well. So it could be a win-win for Brandstrom as well as the team. So I think there's a pretty good opportunity here that he starts the year in Vegas, at least gets a sample size of games, and then we'll see what happens from there. Now, speaking of young NHL prospect defensemen really catching people by surprise here, let's jump over to the Pittsburgh Penguins and talk about Juuso Riikola. Not only did we see Riikola score a highlight reel goal the other night, but he's actually shown pretty good hockey sense and pretty strong defensive play for somebody his age and experience level. So right now, he's certainly making a case for the Penguins to make some hard decisions here. They very well might give him at least a sample size of games to start the NHL season. The 24-year-old Finnish defenseman has been absolutely tremendous here for the Penguins in the preseason. So I do think there's a pretty good opportunity. He's going to get a chance to at least play some NHL games, and we'll see how things go for him in Pittsburgh. I know we already touched on some of the Ottawa Senators prospects that are going to the minors to start the season, but a couple of guys that are more likely going to be making the team here is 2018 first rounder Brady Tkachuk and last year's second round pick Alex Formenton. They've both been tremendous for the Senators in the preseason, and both look like they're likely not only going to make the team, but probably get a chance to play top 6 minutes early in the season to see how things go. Brady Tkachuk seems to have been forming pretty strong chemistry here with Senators forward Mark Stone. It's quite possible both of them could be on a line, possibly with Matt Duchene, and maybe form the Senators' top line. Alex Formenton very well could play on that line as well. He certainly has blazing speed and has looked tremendous in training camp. So both Formenton and Tkachuk look like they're locks to make the Senators' roster here at a training camp. Calgary Flames forward Dylan Dubé has been absolutely tremendous for the Flames as well. He's been red hot, pardon the pun. Dylan Dubé has been absolutely tremendous for the Flames here in the preseason and certainly looks like he has an excellent shot at making this team at a training camp. Considering the number of forwards they have under contract already with NHL experience, it certainly was quite possible that Dylan Dubé would have a tough time here cracking the roster, but he's done pretty well in the preseason, and I do think they're going to give him a chance here to play early on. Dubé has been one of the more productive forwards for the Flames so far during the preseason. Now, one NHL prospect we don't really know what's going to happen with yet is LA Kings center iceman Gabe Vilardi. Now, Vilardi hasn't really been able to do a whole lot in training camp. He's been injured. They've had him labeled as week to week, and he really hasn't been able to participate a whole lot within a training camp or preseason games. So right now, it's not really clear. Considering the lack of opportunity to play due to the injury, I think that's a pretty good opportunity here that Vilardi likely won't make the team at a training camp and will likely end up going back to junior for one more season. So that's all your updates for today on all the NHL top prospects as we pass the halfway point here in training camp and the NHL preseason. Obviously, as I mentioned, a lot of the other top guys that you fully expect to make the NHL, they're still looking pretty strong, and there hasn't been really any changes in those regards. I want to mainly update you today on all these rookies where it wasn't really clear if they'd have an opportunity to play in the NHL this season or not. Now, if you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.